down the hammer and pick up the pencil. You're about to listen to the Savvy Radio Show. Learn from real-life real estate investors, experience revealed with the Savvy Landlord as your host.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls from around the world, even in New York City. I haven't been there in a long time. Manhattan is a place you want to visit, and there's people out there that you want to get to know. And I'm just honored. This is going to be the very first podcast that I ever talk about marijuana, weed, cannabis, these things that people partake in their bloodstream. And we're going to get into some cannabis today. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about me and my journey in cannabis. And I'm just super stoked. I met this random guy. I mean, first of all, if you know me enough, I hire coaches. I mean, if you look at professionals, they always have a coach. And, you know, there's a lot of cheap people out there. There's a lot of cheap investors out there. Some of the good ones have hired me. But anyway, if you want to go to the next level, you got to hire a coach. And that's exactly how I met Michael Z. Oh, shit. Michael Z. Say your name.
Michael Zaytsev.
Zaytsev. Man, I practiced this and I screwed it up because I was so excited. Anyway, I call him Michael Z, Mike Z for short. And I'll spell his name for you because if you're driving, don't kill yourself. It's Zaytsev. Anyway, so I randomly met this guy. This is how I met Michael. And so if you know that I am a partner in a cannabis accounting firm here in Oklahoma City. We have clients all over the United States. And we've been growing leaps and bounds. If you know, we've been in business almost 4 years. I've been a part of this team for 2 years, and we were at a tipping point where we need to go to the next level. And Mike Z came across my desk from one of our awesome business development. Jeremy Willis handed me this book. I looked at this book and I was like, this is legit. I was like, set this up and let me meet this dude. And I met this guy, and I'm like, and he's a great coach. And so that's where we're at today. Let me just tell you a little bit more about Mike Z. He's the founder of High NY, or New York for short. It's the #1 cannabis meetup group. If you don't get involved in meetup groups, there's something wrong with you. This is how you connect, network, find money, find opportunities, get involved in a meetup group. He produces NYC's first New York City Cannabis Film Festival. South by Southwest. Produced High Tech, a hackathon in California's first ever cannabis-focused hackathon. Cannabis. I mean, this guy he's got derivatives everywhere, just kind of like the Savvy brand. He produced hold on. So let me slow down here. I got so excited I can't even read my own notes. He's honored with the Cannabis Business Award in 2017. He's been invited to speak at TEDx, CBS News. What a baller. My favorite thing is that this really down-to-earth book is called the Cannabis Business Book. It's the Entrepreneur's Guide, which is my favorite word, is entrepreneur. And it really just outlines every kind of like minute. It's written the way I like to read, right to the point, no fluff. It's not a super big book. It's like 100 and something pages. It's baller. He also has appeared on several articles, or on Forbes.com. He's written several articles there. And my favorite website besides savvyinvestors.com, that's we tuned into, which is entrepreneur.com. So we got a real hustler entrepreneur from New York City here on the Savvy Radio Show. And we're talking about marijuana, cannabis, which is like all my fans just disappeared. So like they're anti cannabis. And let me just say, no, I used to be that guy. I was beat up. You can't smoke, your brain's going to fry, or whatever that commercial. I grew up in that generation where that commercial was ingrained in you, and they beat you up at school and you were the bad person. And that's how I carried that almost 40 something years until I met an amazing woman named Rose Taylor, who grew up in the cannabis industry, and her family grows, and they've been around. And it's just after I started reading everything about the medicinal aspects of it, I've just been impressed, and I've just seen transformation. I saw a girl in a dispensary that we manage their accounting, and she has epilepsy, and it was just powerful that she can enjoy life at a different state. And of course, there's a lot more detail, and this is not the medical cannabis show, but it is a reckon with in the business industry as an entrepreneur. And I do have a lot of friends that buy a lot of commercial buildings that we always chat about cannabis. And a lot of people don't know that I'm in cannabis, and I am, and I'm not. I'm not against it finally, because, the reason why is just like racism, just like anything else. It's a level of education. I was ignorant and I saw the light. Now I don't get high, but if I needed to, if I had some kind of crazy illness or something, I may partake. But as of right now, I support the industry. I'm 100% what's going on. And it's empowering some people, of course, is people abusing it, just like alcohol, just like anything else. And that was sorry for the super long intro, Mike. I'm sorry. And what's the best way to talk to you, Mike Z or Michael? What do you prefer?
Either one is cool. Right. Let's go with Mike Z today.
Mike Z, because I'm never going to say your name again, unless I see you at some club somewhere, or some. Another thing that this guy does is similar to me. This is why I like Mike is he's a promoter too. He puts on events and speaks, and just I can't wait to get to know you. So I know you weren't born into weed or marijuana or cannabis, whatever. We'll just say cannabis to keep it kosher. But tell us a little bit about your story. Like, you entrepreneur your whole life. When was the first time that you partaked in an entrepreneur exchanging value for dollar bills?
Yeah, so I think I would start in high school, I think. And that's where I got introduced to cannabis as well. But even before that, I got involved in student government. And one of the things, I went to Stuyvesant High School, which is one of the most prestigious public schools in New York City. And it's super competitive, and it's huge. We got over 3,000 students. And so one of the things that students would do in the school was sell candy. So kids would go to Costco and buy boxes of candy and then sell them in school for, like $1 a candy, and you would be making, like a 50% markup on the candy. And, that was probably my first entrepreneurial venture, where I was like, not super entrepreneurial, but, buy low, sell high, make your margin and move on. And so that was like probably the first thing I ever did that was entrepreneurial as a kid. And then I actually got involved in student government and became the CFO of the student union, which, believe it or not, had like a $80,000 or $100,000 budget. Wow. And so I got to get some experience managing that money and giving it out to different school clubs. And we had
in high school. So let me get this straight. You're operating a spreadsheet.
Yes, it was a spreadsheet, but also we would have committee meetings where clubs would come and request funding, and then we would have to approve or deny it. Yeah. And then the biggest school. Yeah, it was pretty awesome. And the biggest thing was we had this annual event that was like a student produced musical. And I had to manage the money for that thing. And it was a big money maker. So, I'll never forget being, like a high school junior, maybe 16 years old, 17 years old. And the night of the show, we would sell out the theater, which was like a 800, 900 person theater. And we would sell concessions and T-shirts and merch and all this stuff. And so at the end of the night, me and, the teacher who was like in charge of the student government, and then, the rest of the crew were sitting there counting like 15, 20 grand in cash. And it was the first time I'd ever been around that much money in cash. And I was just like, this is fun. Counting money like this. This is fun.
What's interesting is the first word that came to my mind was a foundation. Like, you have an understanding. I remember the first time I counted a lot of money. I did a rave, and there was thousands of dollars, and then splitting this money, and triple checking things. And of course, in the cannabis now, there's a lot of transactions that are in cash now, and it's interesting. It's comfortable. Like, I'm not offended by or weird about it. Just a side crazy question. On your high school, do you know that awesome speaker Naval? That's the tech guy. Is that the same school?
It is.
Holy shit! Damn.
Yeah.
I have been reading his book. the alchem, whatever it is. I mean,
The almanac, yeah.
The almanac. Oh my gosh.
Or
I don't want to, I don't,
almanac.
that is on my podcast list to talk about that guy. That dude has transformed me just recently. And there has not been any books, your book, but there's not has been, his book has been like really profound. And his transition in his life. So let me just, guys, I know this is crazy. I had to just kind of stop here. I can't say the cat's last name, but his name's Naval. And he came from India at 12 years old. This dude was working in an Indian restaurant, like blue collar, parents working like just crazy. And this guy right now, he contributes. He says this one thing in the book. He says he got accepted into this school and he went from blue collar to white collar with one decision by going to that school. And you don't know this guy, but if you know about Novell, he is like the tech wizard, angel investor website. He's backed Uber, you name it. This dude is a genius. And he's like the modern day Jim Rohn in my mind. He's 2022 Tony Robbins. Like this dude is off the chain, but I don't want to talk that's for another podcast that's coming up, gents. But when you said that high school and the way he talked about that high school, it changed his life forever. That one decision to go to that school was the most epic thing, and that paved the way in the relationships and the connections.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, yeah, he's awesome. I love his book, love his stuff. And I was pumped when I found out he went to STY, but I'm with him. Going to STY was, one of the best decisions I ever made. And I almost didn't go. What's funny is I almost didn't go because I had a mentor at the time who said, Mike, do yourself a favor, go to, your local school in Brooklyn, and there you'll be the top student. And then it'll be much easier for you to get into an elite college. And, don't go through the pain of going to STY, which is, for me was an hour commute each way on the subway every day. And, STY is incredibly competitive, and it's the best and the best of the best in New York City all go there, at least in the public school circuit. And so he was like, this guy who I respected, who was a teacher in the public schools, told me, don't go there. You're going to work so hard. It's going to be so stressful. Just go to your local school and be the top dog there. But wow. I ended up visiting STY. It was like the open house for admitted students. And when I saw this building and this school, I was just like, no way, I can't not go here because this is different. This is special. And I was lucky to have the self-awareness to know that I'm competitive and I adjust to my environment. And so I was like, if I go to the local high school, I'm not going to be the top dog. I'm just going to, adjust to like whatever is acceptable or average or good enough. Whereas if I go to the school where it's the best of the best, then I'm going to be pushed to strive to be one of the best there. And so, yeah, man,
that's interesting. Okay, I got 2 points out of there. One, how did you fight your mentor? I mean, you didn't fight him, but most people just comply, right? What gave you the nerve to say no to him?
I was super lucky with my parents who really, from a young age, encouraged me to make my own decisions. Mm-hmm. And, my mom always jokes that I was independent and did whatever I wanted from birth. I was born a month or two premature. And she said, even then he was on his own schedule and program. And so, by that time, yeah. And they were.
Was there a conflict where you my son sometimes doesn't like the rejection, did you go back to him, to the mentor, and say, you just said, I'm on my own. I'm going to do my own thing.
No, he was totally cool with it. He had other students that he'd worked with that had gone there, and he knew the school well. Right. He was like, hey, if you want to go for it. And, my parents were pumped because they, for them, It was like this prestigious thing and they were excited. And so, I'm glad I went. Of course, like some of my best friends to this day are people that I met there that I'm still in touch with. Yeah.
Now you mentioned the hour commute there as a young lad, right? Yep. So what kept you motivated? And like, obviously I wrote down this word committed. I have children now, they're young, but I see the load of homework in middle school. I mean, I see them getting overwhelmed and then riding a train. So what kept you rolling? What this level of tenacity of commitment? Obviously that's what makes you a great coach. Cause like people just fall off you can't give up on people. Right. But what fired you up? Was it this vision, dream, goal? What was going through your mind? I know it wasn't easy.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually loved the train ride because for me, as a kid who grew up in New York City, this was like an adventure every day. You know, it was
stabs. What you mean?
Yeah. Well, no, it was pretty safe by that era. But, honestly, I did oftentimes in the morning, I was doing my homework on the train. Like I was using that time to work.
So it's forcing you to be disciplined.
Yeah. Yeah. And then on the way home, like I hate to admit it, but my buddies and I would just be like hooligans on the train, messing around, like being really obnoxious and loud and terrible and inappropriate. But it was fun. It became our playground essentially.
Cool. And was there people in your neighborhood that went there too, that got accepted?
Yeah, there were a handful. So I had a couple of buddies that we would go back on the train usually together.
All right. So from high school, where'd you go from there?
Yeah. So I went to California to undergrad, to Claremont McKenna College, which is I'd consider it a hidden gem. It's, a small liberal arts school, but it's got one of the strongest econ departments in the world. Cool. And, actually now one of my buddies has put out some research that says that Claremont alum have done in the last like 20 or 30 years have been some of the most successful in the venture world. And as far as starting businesses, getting funding and exiting are like on par with Stanford and Harvard. And so,
that's cool.
Yeah.
I love the secret weapons of life, and you get a lot more attention. So then, the cannabis space. So, I mean, you're at a tech school kind of, and what, you had big aspirations, obviously, when you're in college. I mean, did those change during that process? Or I mean, cannabis was underground, right? I mean, not as exposed as it is now.
Yeah, totally. So I had no plans of getting into cannabis. In college, I had been exposed to a little more of the West Coast culture. And at that time, I saw how when I went to LA and went to Venice Beach, for example, I saw like, oh, you could go get a medical card for however much it was, $50, $80, and you can go buy weed. And I just thought, this doesn't make sense. How is it that in California, you could just go buy this stuff and it's perfectly normal. Mm-hmm. Whereas when I go back to New York, it's still, very much illegal, illicit, underground, etc.
You're bad.
But yeah, exactly. But at that time, I was very much on what I'll call the traditional path. I grew up in this immigrant family, and my whole life I was told, go to school, get good grades, get a good job. That's life. And so after I graduated Claremont, I went and I got a job at JP Morgan in wealth management. And I made really good money for a 21-year-old out of undergrad. And, my parents were super pumped and I was absolutely miserable. I was working this job. I felt like, all right, I had delivered on what I was supposed to do, what I had been told was the life plan or whatnot. And I found it to be completely
bogus.
Yeah, exactly.
It's bogus.
And then, shortly before that, before I graduated, I almost started a business. I almost started this entrepreneurial venture that I felt like had a lot of potential, but I really didn't have the foundation to or I didn't believe I had the foundation to make it happen, because I didn't know anything about running a business. I didn't have, friends and family that could mentor me. I didn't feel comfortable taking the risk. And so I basically had all these ideas and had like this whole vision of how I could build this incredible business and lifestyle business and, travel the country selling this silly product to college kids and partying and all this stuff. But I was like, I can't do that. I have to take this corporate job and, make this money and kind of do this whole thing. So I went into corporate. I lasted about a year at the bank because I was miserable, and I said, I got to do something else. And around that time, a lot of my friends started working in Silicon Valley. And so I thought the startup world was much more interesting than the finance world and would be a much better culture fit for me. And so I started applying to places in the tech world, and I got pretty lucky. I applied to this place called Wildfire, where a couple of my classmates had been working. And it was a startup that Gary Vee had invested in. And in the time that I applied, got accepted, and I pushed out my start date a bit. And in that time, that in between time, they got acquired by Google. And so my initial reaction when I found that out, I was like, oh shit, do I still have a job? Right. And so I found out that I did. And then by the time I started, they were now at Google HQ and now a part of Google. So I kind of got a backdoor into Google and started working at Google, which was awesome. And, let me just go back to Gary Vee for a second, because I actually had the chance to meet him when I was a senior in college. He was doing a book tour for the Thank You Economy. And so I got to meet him. He came to campus, and I read the book, and I thought it was like profound and really influenced my business philosophy, if you will. And I got a chance to ask him a question in the Q&A and talk to him for like 2 minutes after. And, he's another immigrant from the former Soviet Union who became this big time entrepreneur, investor. So for me, he was like, iconic. And so I had this conversation with him, and, he said to me, you get it. You've got what it takes to be an entrepreneur. And at the time, like, that was everything to me.
So that was your defining moment. That was my question for you. That was the snap, the defining moment, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. That was, it still took me a few years to go and go out there, but that was forever burned into my brain that I was like, hey, if Gary Vee thinks that I can do it, then
that's right.
I can do it.
You got to borrow someone else's credibility. You got to borrow someone else's belief in you. So my question, dude, you went right into where I was wanting to go. During that process, JP Morgan, was there a book or, obviously Gary Vee impacted you? Is there any other material that you devoured that was like, that's like Naval for me right now? But obviously I've been an entrepreneur 20 something years, but tell me, is there something, and we can help some other people, young people out there that think that way as well, or are on the edge. You're like, I'm going here and got all this debt. I'm going nowhere. I don't even know if I can get a job, but I want to be an entrepreneur, but I'm scared. Was there any material that you came across or a book or something that impacted you? Yeah,
absolutely. I'll give you two that were really important in my journey. The first one was The 4-Hour Workweek, Tim Ferriss. And that was actually, my older brother recommended it to me, and I read it when I was in college. And that was what sparked my interest in wanting to do a business or an entrepreneurship in the first place. And then years later, it was Think and Grow Rich, which again, another classic, Napoleon Hill. And actually, the reason that book was so impactful for me, because it was essentially the blueprint I used to write my book, the Cannabis Business Book, because at the time, I essentially took his exact model of I'm going to go interview the most successful, influential people in this industry. And, exactly what you said, leverage, borrow their credibility, their wisdom, their experience, and
you didn't
put
have
it
Dale
together.
Carnegie introduce you. So you had to hustle, right? If you guys know about the book, Dale Carnegie, oh no, it was the steel guy. No, Dale Carnegie. He did all the introductions for him. Like Napoleon Hill's amazing and I love his material, but hey guys, he had someone pave a little way, made a few phone calls. He did all the work. Napoleon grinded it out.
Right.
You didn't have that. I'm assuming you had to call, got rejected. I mean, you have 4 articles on Forbes. I mean, they don't just pick up flappy flap people. They vet you out.
Yep.
Because it reflects them, and they're a multi-corporation. They don't let anyone on there. It's impressive. So that, again, another desire, another commitment. What drives you to stay the course? And I love what you said earlier, and I don't know if people can pick this up. You're like, my journey. A lot of people just are confused. Like they get this job or they get this apartment and I have arrived. You never arrive. You it's this journey. I forgot my question, but what is your driving force? Like, because I mean, you're alone. No one else is like you. No one's thinking like you. Everyone's partying, trying to get laid, or trying to get some, big job that pays, $150,000, $200 a year, so I can get a BMW, whatever. And you're like, got your head down. I'm going to write a book, and then I got to figure out how to get people to say yes.
Yep.
Right. Because I know I sell all day long and I get a lot of rejection. What motivated? Was it the token of a book as an author? You don't get paid, right? I'm like, no one knows that. So you think you're an author, you're rich, you have to hustle every day. Tell me, what drove you?
Yeah. So it's a great question. I think the first thing, the biggest thing is I'll go back to my family. Again, I mentioned immigrant parents, I mean, my family came to America on 420 when I was a baby. And 420 is like, the international cannabis holiday or whatnot. Right. And so now I joke that this is my destiny, to be doing all this stuff. That's but what happened was, so I was working at Google and I was about 1.5 years into that. And honestly, I got bored. Like I felt like I was retired in a way. I had an awesome
Everybody's
life.
dream is to be at Google, right? I mean,
at the tech it was awesome. Honestly, like I came to work every day. I ate amazing food over there. I would go work out at the nice facility. All my coworkers were incredibly bright and smart and awesome. And I was doing well selling, the software and it was pretty easy. And I was just like, well, what am I going to do? I kind of got bored and said, all right, well, now that I've got this experience, I feel like I could take a stab at this entrepreneurship thing. That was still in my mind now, 3-4 years later. And actually what happened was, I don't know, again, it was destiny, luck, whatever, but I was out one day in San Francisco and I met this girl at a bar who was a coach. And I had never really heard of coaching so much. I knew it was a thing because some of the people at JP Morgan had executive coaches. And so I was like, okay, this is not nonsense. This is something real, but I didn't really know much about it. And so I meet this girl at this bar and she tells me how she's a health coach and she was working, 10, 15 hours a week. And she was making about the same money as I was making working at Google. And I was like, wait a second, there's something wrong with this equation. And so I started digging into it and I started realizing, okay, I'm selling, all of this software and making all this money for this other business, but surely I could do the same thing for myself. And then, I had realized going back to another book that really really influenced me that I read in high school was Malcolm Gladwell's book. I'm struggling to remember. I forgot if it was that. It might have been The Tipping Point, actually, or Outliers.
Point.
One of those
Tipping
two.
Point was before that. Yeah, it was very impactful. Outliners was okay. It was just fascinating, but Tipping Point was like when they talked about the hush puppies in New York.
Yeah,
and they talked about the shoes and like these crazy trends that would just explode.
Right. So for me, it was the 10,000 hour rule.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was like, I was 22, 23, and I said, what do I want 10,000 hours of experience in? What do I want to become great at? What do I want to be an expert in? And one of, and I knew the answer wasn't selling software. And so I thought, like,
for Google, for somebody else.
Right. Or at all. And then I thought, like, okay, so what's going to serve me? What's going to help me be successful regardless of the area that or business or whatever? And I thought, I want 10,000. This is going to sound silly because it's not very specific or tangible, but I was like, I want 10,000 hours of experience being a good person. And I didn't really know what that meant at the time, but what I had realized was since high school, for fun, I had been reading personal development books, and that was just like my area of interest. And so when I met this coach and I realized, okay, here's an opportunity to have that 4-hour work week type lifestyle business and help people and work on personal development. And I figured the best way to learn something is to teach it. So if I can be coaching others on how to improve their skills and improve their quality of life, then, I can build those skills for myself. And so that was when I got the idea of, what, I think I could become a coach. And then, no joke, a week or two later, I had a near-death freak accident. Yeah. And so that kind of, threw everything for a loop. That really changed everything for me. And so I had this freak accident in San Francisco, had to go get emergency surgery, and had basically like a year-long recovery process. I had to move back home to New York so I could get care from my family, and went on disability, and went from 23-year-old on top of the world
dreams, big dreams,
to like literally like bedridden, couldn't really do much for myself. And that was when everything started changing for me, because I had to go through a lot of suffering to recover. And also, so I'll skip over some of that stuff, but basically I got better. And then I was like, all right, I got to go back to work. And I went back to work in the tech world selling software. And a couple of months into it, my dream at that time was, okay, let me work a few years more in tech, rise up in the ranks, and then I can go start a business and get VC funding and be a tech CEO. Because that was like the cool big
everyone
thing back then.
Wants that. I did too. Yeah, absolutely.
And then, about 5-6 months into it, I was like, what the hell am I doing with my life? I could have just died. Like I came very close, it was arguably a miracle that I didn't die. And, and so I started wondering, like, well, what the hell am I doing here? What am I really doing here? And I wasn't enjoying this job. And I said, okay, life's too short. I can't take for granted anymore that I have, these next few years to just rise in the ranks and do my thing. I'm going to go and do my thing right now.
That's
and
right.
So I quit the job and decided, I'm going to take the next year. I basically made a plan for myself. I said, I'm going to take the next year to become a coach, to get training, get certified, work on myself, do whatever I think I need to do to become great at this, and try to make some money. And I said, I'm not going to put pressure on myself to make money for a year, but let's see if I'm making any money in a year. And if not, then I'll go back and get a job. And so that's
Cool.
how I started.
That's cool.
And then,
I thought challenges was what I thought you were going to, I see that, the entrepreneur side is like, it's a challenge. Like the school was a challenge. See if I could do it. Right. That's kind of your motivation. All right. So what a phenomenal story. I definitely, you need to write about it. Like in your next book, I guess, would be a really amazing thing. So how about being a published author? So what went there? Like, okay, I'm a coach. You're in there trying to change people's lives, get them to the next level. And then, so tell us about the book.
So, all right, I'll get there in a sec. Let me just get you to the cannabis part. Because basically,
well, I'm still stuck on your personal development. I have 1,000 questions, but people don't listen beyond 30 minutes. Like their attention spans are so short, but this is so enthralling for me. But when you were talking about your high school reading personal development books, at first it reminds me of my wife, because that's where she started. I didn't get into personal development until like I hit rock bottom in the late 20s. Is where I Got Rich Dad Poor Dad was the first book first personal development book. And then that led to an explosion of education. But it's interesting. I have 1,000 questions, but let's get into the cannabis. So decided to be a coach. You quit a freaking phenomenal job. Of course, you're on the edge of death, hanging on like, what's my purpose? What's my life? Sunny California to dirty New York. No offense. I'm just playing.
No, it's quite dirty.
It is. I saw a picture yesterday. I was like, someone, I want to, what's one of my goals is to run a marathon there. And I'm like, it's dirty there. It's just dirty. Anyway. Tell us how you got into cannabis.
Yeah. So I quit the job. I started the coaching, and I got on my business development hustle, which meant going to all these different networking events all over New York City and meeting people and trying to find and create client relationships. And one day a friend invites me to a cannabis event, which I'd never even heard of cannabis events happening in New York.
That's true.
And again, this was, just for context, 2014, where New York had just passed the medical cannabis law. And so we were just getting started here. Whereas in California, where I had just come back from, it was like, so normal out there. And so I went to this cannabis event. I had been a big time stoner by that point. And but I was completely ignorant. I had no idea anything about cannabis,
the industry itself,
the history, the mechanics. Nothing, literally nothing. And at that event, I met some real activists and medical patients and people who had experienced the harms of cannabis prohibition firsthand. And that was like the big awakening aha moment for me, because I was like, I love cannabis, such a big part of my life. A lot of my friendships were built around it. I had basically quit drinking alcohol years ago, and cannabis was like my thing. And so when I went to this event and I learned some of these basic facts about cannabis, I was like, that's it. This is why I'm alive. This is what I'm going to be doing, is working this cannabis thing. Because, for me, it was like the perfect storm of, here's something that I'm really, really into. Here's a new multi-billion-dollar industry that's transitioning from underground to legal, that's just getting started. Mm-hmm. When else am I going to see that in my lifetime?
That's cool.
And
well said right there.
And so I was like, all right, I'm going to go all in on this. And, so basically I saw how this event compared to all the finance and tech events I was going to. And I was like, all right, like there's a lot of room for improvement here. And so
right. Have you ever been to AdTech?
No, I don't think so.
It's advertising technology at San Francisco and New York. That's how I've been to New York several times. Anyway,
nice.
Keep going. That is an organized event on technology. That's where Yahoo and Google go, ad revenue spend, share, rev share, all kinds of stuff. Anyway, that's another day.
So
yeah, definitely. You saw the need, right? You're an entrepreneur. There's a problem and it sucks. It's not organized. It's not classy or whatever the case may be.
Yep.
And you saw the problem. You saw the need.
Yep. And for me, it was like, I wanted to get educated. I was like, oh shit, like there's a whole world here. I want to learn more.
You don't even know about in New York.
Yep. And so I realized I also, I was thinking ahead a little bit, and I realized, okay, here's this new industry that's forming that I don't know anyone. I'm just a consumer. I have no credibility or experience. So how am I going to build a brand and network for myself?
Smart.
And so I started creating these events, which, to your earlier point, how did I get in front of all of these people for the book? I took the skills I learned at Google as a sales guy, and I started just cold outreach to anyone I saw in the media, anyone I saw online.
That's what I do too, man.
Yep.
People, how'd you get successful? It's work. It's like, it's not easy. It's like you get, man, you're very impressive. I cannot wait. So we got to wrap this up because like, again, just all the statistics, cause I'm a data guy, people fall off. I mean, I can talk to you for days. That's why I think you're a wonderful coach, because you listen well and you're passionate about what you do. I think that's what makes a coach successful. And that's why people hire me, because I'm passionate about what I'm doing and I want success. I always, when someone tries to hire me or whatever, I'm like, it's about results. Like we're going to get it done. We may not agree and you may not like my style because sometimes I'm wild, but we're going to get results. So tell us about the book. How do we buy it? Do you have a website? Do you have room for clients at this point in time? I know I go through seasons where I'm like, I can't take on people because I can barely eat and breathe myself. And how do people get a hold of you? And kind of walk us through kind of a process there. We got about 3-4 more minutes, and tell me about, what your services that you can offer now. In Oklahoma, I see this, and this is why I wanted this interview with you, is that there's a lot of people that call the accounting firm and they don't know anything. They sometimes don't even have a license, or they want to hire someone to help them get their license. And in Oklahoma, it's very easy to get your license. It's not, and they're changing these laws pretty weekly, but I think a consultant is huge right now in this space, that someone's authentic and genuine. And, do you offer that type of service? What do you offer people now? Obviously, you should read his book, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. The book is called The Cannabis Business Book. It's real simple. I love the title, and The Entrepreneur's Guide. So even if you Google up the word entrepreneur and cannabis, you should find Mike Z's book, and you should buy it. It's so reasonable, and it's an easy read, and it's on Audible too. So like you there's no excuse you can't get this cat's book.
Yep.
And so tell us like what you offer and what you do for folks.
Yeah, awesome. So definitely check out the Cannabis Business Book on Amazon. And you can get the audio book.
I think my whole staff has it.
Awesome.
There's like 3 copies floating around. And of course, I do it now. I get the audio and the Kindle.
Nice.
So because I got to keep my attention span, because it gets worse every day.
That's the pro move.
Yeah. Right.
So I actually have the hardcover is coming soon, but for now you could get the paperback, Kindle, or audiobook on Amazon. It's the Cannabis Business Book. You could find me at himikez.com. That's HI Mike Z, and at HiMikeZ on Twitter and Instagram. Honestly, I don't have a ton of room for coaching right now, which is sad. I'm working with a bunch of entrepreneurs as an advisor for equity lately. So that's kind of been tying me up. And right now, New York is legalizing, or has legalized, and is in the process of setting up its adult use infrastructure and industry. So I'm very much focused on high NY and scaling that up so I could grow with the industry. That being said, I'm always open to inquiries and connecting people and referring people. So, I don't really do the licensing piece as far as applying for licenses or whatnot, but I have a bunch of colleagues, consultants that I know are super experienced, super legit, and I would be happy to make intros. That being said, I'm always open, sometimes to my detriment. I'm always open to exploring an opportunity because I'm curious and I like knowing what's out there. Right. But, I'm also teaching. I recently became a professor at a local university here, CUNY Medgar Evers College, which is part of the CUNY system, City University of New York, which is the largest urban public education system as far as colleges in the country. And I'm teaching their first ever cannabis class, which has been intro to cannabis. So that's been keeping
congratulations.
Me busy.
Intro. Yeah. There's all your material for your workbook. What up? That's right. And then usually in college, the professor writes the book and you could sell the book, right? You got to buy my book. Yes, savvy. I tried to get into the tech school here and they never let me in. But
their loss.
Yeah. Well, that was young and dumb. That was 20 years ago, 15 years ago. But what advice would you give, right? I mean, you've had this roller coaster, immigrant, right? Went to this great high school. Then you went to this kind of a boutique college, which is kind of cool, hidden. And then you went to the dream job. I mean, I used to coach a guy that his dream was Google. He dated a Google girl, which is even more. I can't wait to share this podcast with him. And then, but he still has been trying to do entrepreneur, but he's scared. And then now you're living your dream and you're healthy. So what advice would you give? If you had children or you had an opportunity to tell someone I know that's kind of a powerful thing to think, I think this way all the time when I'm coaching people. If you were my son and I try to say this in a loving manner, I would do this. I would read this. I would really spend 20 minutes every day walking, exercising. There's some heavy weights I'm working with right now. Come on, heavy weights. It's time to get healthy. But what advice would you give or say, if you could?
Advice just in general on anything?
Yeah, whatever. What have you learned? What,
wow.
This is the one thing, there's a lot of defining moments in your world. You said one thing that's very powerful, life is super short. Especially I'm 48 and, I've gained a bunch of weight, lost a bunch of weight. And, I've had a second chance at life in a lot of ways. I'm a big avid reader. There's certain books you should read, but what would you tell somebody?
Wow. Big question.
I'm gonna
do,
it could be simple cliche. It don't matter. Leave us with a Mike Z. The session that I had with you was powerful. Yeah. I was impressed with you. Tell me, leave somebody with something that memorable. Right.
I'm going to go. I got a couple of different ways I can go here. One is, if I'm being silly, I'll say stay hydrated. You got to drink that water if you want to stay alive. But more seriously, I'm going to, I'll give you a 2-for-1 here, which is one, everyone needs mentors and advisors. Don't do it yourself. This kind of learn. Success leaves clues. There's models. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. So find people who have accomplished whatever it is you're looking to accomplish and learn from them.
That's right.
They will fast track you. Exactly.
That's why I called you.
Exactly.
That's 100 right there. Ladies and gents, that's my secret weapon. I just call the baller. I just call the dude and say, hey, what do you charge? This is my goal. We want to dominate in this accounting space. It's simple. Yep, right. Yep, I love it. Okay. 2-for-1. All right. I get my money's worth. Okay.
The second one, just to model that, I'm going to steal an answer from one of my mentors, which is, he said this was like a throwaway line he said once that I'm just always going to remember because I think it's so brilliant. He said, the secret to life is gratitude. And I think that that's incredibly powerful because, as a coach, what I've learned over the years is often my job is to improve the other person's energetic state or disposition. And what I've found is, when I'm grateful, when I'm happy, when I'm joyous, there's power in that. I'm much more likely to perform at a higher level when I'm happy, joyous, grateful, enthusiastic than if I'm oh man, I got to do this shit again, or
I got to hire this person. I got to fire this gal. I catch myself thinking that way too, man. You got to be positive. I got smashed the other day and one of my apartments blew up and I'm like, what can I do? I can only fix it. Right. Thank God I have money. I'm grateful that I have enough finances today. Now tomorrow I may be broke, but today I can get that drywall done.
Yep. So
that's awesome, man.
Those would be my two. Stay hydrated and be
go
grateful.
buy the book, gents and ladies, the Cannabis business book, The Business of Cannabis. Okay. The Entrepreneur's Guide, Mike Zaytsev. Reach out to him. What was your website? I didn't write that down, which is
HiMikeZ.com. HiMikeZ.com.
Awesome. Hey man, it's been a pleasure and I can't wait to see you sometime in New York.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.
Thanks for listening to the Savvy Radio Show. Glide online and listen to our other motivating episodes at SavvyRadioShow.com. Connect on Twitter at LandlordBook and always be buying assets.